Lessons. Learned Malik Johnson's extraordinary journey from wrongful arrest to Harvard Law School teaches us profound lessons about resilience, systemic change, and the transformative power of education. His story demonstrates that individual excellence cannot shield young people of color from institutional bias, but it also shows how proper response to injustice can create lasting positive change for entire communities. The airline industry's swift policy changes following public outcry prove that corporate accountability requires constant vigilance from citizens and media attention. Rebecca Sterling's transformation from perpetrator to advocate illustrates that even deeply ingrained prejudices can be addressed through education, consequences, and genuine commitment to change. Perhaps most importantly, Malik's decision to represent his former accuser legally challenges us to consider whether true justice requires punishment or transformation. His choice to establish scholarship programs rather than seek maximum damages shows how victims can become agents of systematic change rather than simply seeking personal compensation. The incident exposed how unconscious bias operates in professional settings, where authority figures' assumptions can escalate minor interactions into life-changing crises. It reminds us that fighting discrimination requires both individual awareness and institutional safeguards, because personal good intentions are insufficient without systematic accountability measures. Ultimately, this story proves that education, integrity, and moral courage can overcome even the most challenging circumstances when supported by community action and media transparency. What lessons from Malik's story resonated most deeply with you? Comment below and share your thoughts on whether forgiveness or accountability creates more lasting change in society. If this incredible journey inspired you to believe in second chances and the power of education, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more amazing true stories of triumph over adversity. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that even our darkest moments can become stepping stones to extraordinary achievements. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in justice, growth, and the possibility that tomorrow can always be better than today. Keep fighting the good fight, and remember that your voice matters in creating the change you want to see in the world. 3 days before that fateful flight, 17-year-old Malik Johnson stood in front of his bedroom mirror in Detroit, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. His reflection showed a young man with kind eyes and a determined jaw, practicing answers to questions that could change his entire future. The Harvard interview that awaited him in Boston represented everything he'd worked toward since elementary school. Malik's small bedroom told the story of his ambitions. Academic awards covered one wall, while another displayed newspaper clippings of civil rights heroes. A framed photo of Thurgood Marshall sat prominently on his desk, next to stacks of law books borrowed from the Detroit Public Library. His mother, Denise Johnson, worked double shifts as a nurse at Detroit Medical Center just to keep their modest 2-bedroom apartment and pay for Malik's educational expenses. The sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed. Malik understood every extra hour his mother worked, every dinner of ramen noodles, every time she said no to buying herself something she needed. When his acceptance to interview at Harvard arrived, Denise cried for 20 minutes before composing herself enough to help him research plane tickets. The cost nearly broke their budget, but she insisted nothing would stop her son from seizing this opportunity. "Baby, your daddy would be so proud," she whispered that morning, straightening his collar. Malik's father had died in a car accident when he was 12, leaving behind only his best suit and a dream that his son would become somebody important. That suit, carefully tailored to fit Malik's growing frame, now hung ready for the most important interview of his young life. Malik's achievements spoke for themselves. Valedictorian of his senior class at Cass Technical High School, captain of the debate team, and volunteer coordinator at the downtown homeless shelter. His essay about growing up in Detroit's struggles while maintaining hope for change had moved his English teacher to tears. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly white woman next door who'd tutored him in advanced literature for free, called him the smartest student she'd encountered in 40 years of teaching. The neighborhood where Malik grew up wasn't easy. Abandoned houses dotted his street, and crime statistics made national headlines. But Malik saw potential where others saw problems. His volunteer work focused on literacy programs for younger kids, and his debate topics consistently addressed systemic inequality and educational access. Teachers recognized his exceptional analytical mind, while classmates respected his genuine desire to help others succeed. His Harvard application included letters of recommendation that read like love letters to his character. Principal Martinez wrote about Malik's leadership during a student protest over inadequate textbooks, describing how he organized peaceful demonstrations that actually resulted in policy changes. Coach Williams detailed how Malik had transformed the debate team from district laughingstock to state competitors in just 2 years. Even the homeless shelter director contributed a letter describing Malik's innovative reading program that had improved literacy rates among shelter children. The day before his flight, Malik visited Mrs. Patterson one final time. She'd helped him perfect his interview responses, challenging him with questions about constitutional law and social justice that went far beyond typical high school curriculum. Her living room, filled with law books and historical documents, had become his second classroom. Their discussions about landmark Supreme Court cases had shaped his understanding of how legal precedent could create social change. "You remember what we talked about regarding Brown versus Board," Mrs. Patterson said, her weathered hands holding his Harvard folder. "Sometimes the most important changes start with one person brave enough to walk through doors others say should stay closed." Malik nodded, understanding the weight of her words and the historical significance of his upcoming opportunity. That evening, Malik carefully packed his father's suit alongside his interview materials. His mother had saved for months to buy him new dress shoes, and he'd practiced walking in them until the leather felt familiar. The folder containing his transcripts, essays, and recommendation letters represented years of dedication and countless hours of studying while his friends played video games or hung out at the mall. As he prepared for bed, Malik looked out his window at the Detroit skyline. The city's lights twinkled like promises of better things to come. Tomorrow's flight would take him to Boston, to Harvard, to possibilities that seemed impossible just a few years ago. His mother knocked softly on his door, entering with warm milk and homemade cookies. "No matter what happens tomorrow," Denise said, sitting on his bed edge, "you've already made me prouder than any mother deserves to be." They talked quietly about his father's dreams, about the scholarship programs Malik hoped to create someday, about the legal cases he wanted to win for families like theirs. When she kissed his forehead goodnight, Malik felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited him in Boston. Detroit Metropolitan Airport buzzed with early morning travelers as Malik arrived 3 hours before his flight. His mother had insisted on driving him, despite her exhaustion from working a 12-hour shift the night before. They sat together, in the departure lounge, sharing coffee and going over his interview notes one final time. When boarding began, Denise hugged her son tightly, whispering prayers for his success and safe return. Flight attendant Rebecca Sterling began her shift. That morning with 28 years of experience and a reputation for maintaining order on every flight. At 53, she prided herself on reading passengers accurately, identifying potential problems before they escalated. Her colleagues respected her no-nonsense approach, though some occasionally questioned her tendency to focus suspiciously on certain travelers. Rebecca's internal assumptions about who belonged in first class and who didn't had never been formally challenged. Malik settled into his coach seat, 23A, carefully placing his Harvard folder in the seat pocket before him. The folder represented everything important: his interview confirmation, campus maps, questions he'd prepared, and backup copies of all his documents. He'd chosen the window seat to watch the landscape change as they flew toward his future. The elderly gentleman beside him, Mr. Thompson, struggled with his carry-on bag until Malik immediately offered assistance. "Heading to Boston for business?" Mr. Thompson asked, noticing Malik's formal attire and serious demeanor. When Malik explained about his Harvard interview, the older man's face lit up with genuine excitement. They spent the first hour of flight discussing Malik's academic achievements and career aspirations. Mr. Thompson, a retired professor from University of Michigan, found himself impressed by the young man's articulate responses and passionate commitment to social justice. Rebecca noticed their conversation while serving beverages, observing Malik's animated discussion about constitutional law and civil rights. Something about his presence in formal attire, combined with his youth and race, triggered her unconscious biases. She began watching him more closely, noting how confidently he spoke about Harvard, wondering silently how a kid from Detroit could afford such expensive educational pursuits. Her suspicious observations started forming a narrative in her mind about potential deception or fraudulent activity. The flight proceeded smoothly for most passengers, but Rebecca's attention remained fixed on Malik. She watched him study Harvard materials, review interview notes, and practice answers under his breath. His obvious preparation and genuine nervousness about the interview should have indicated his legitimate purpose. But Rebecca interpreted his behavior through the lens of her unconscious prejudices. She began cataloging what she considered suspicious activities: his expensive-looking folder, his confidence when discussing Harvard, his presence on a flight to Boston. Captain Williams, making his routine walk through the cabin, paused when he noticed Malik's Harvard materials. As one of the few black pilots in the airline's fleet, Captain Williams understood the significance of educational opportunities for young people of color. He spent several minutes chatting with Malik about the interview process, sharing encouragement and advice based on his own experiences breaking barriers in aviation. Their conversation was warm and supportive, witnessed by several passengers who smiled at the mentorship moment. Other passengers had varied reactions to Malik's presence and his discussion about Harvard. Some, like Mr. Thompson and an elderly teacher named Mrs. Rodriguez, encouraged his academic pursuits and shared stories about their own educational journeys. A few business travelers seemed indifferent, focused on their laptops and phone calls. However, Rebecca's growing suspicion began influencing her interactions with other crew members, as she started dropping subtle comments about the unusual passenger in 23A. Throughout the flight, Malik's behavior remained exemplary. He helped Mr. Thompson with his reading glasses, shared his snacks with a hungry child across the aisle, and politely thanked the flight crew for their service. His genuine kindness and respectful demeanor should have impressed any observant crew member. But Rebecca continued viewing his actions through a distorted lens of suspicion and racial bias. As they began descent into Boston Logan Airport, Malik felt excitement building in his chest. The city's skyline appeared through his window, and he could almost see Harvard University in the distance. Mr. Thompson shook his hand warmly, exchanging contact information and promising to follow up on Malik's interview results. Captain Williams stopped by once more, offering final encouragement and expressing confidence in Malik's abilities. The plane touched down smoothly at Logan Airport, and passengers began gathering their belongings. Malik carefully retrieved his Harvard folder, double-checking that all his documents remained organized and accessible. Rebecca watched his every movement, her suspicions now firmly entrenched despite the complete absence of any genuinely concerning behavior. As passengers deplaned, she made mental notes about reporting her observations to appropriate authorities, never questioning whether her perceptions might be influenced by racial prejudice. Malik stepped off the plane into Boston Logan Airport, his heart racing with anticipation for the opportunity that awaited him at Harvard University. He had no idea that Rebecca Sterling was already formulating a plan that would dramatically alter the trajectory of his life and spark a national conversation about racial profiling in the airline industry. Harvard University's campus stretched before Malik like a living monument to academic excellence and American intellectual history. Walking through Johnston Gate, he felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, generations of students who had passed through these same pathways to shape the nation's legal and political landscape. The brick buildings and ivy-covered walls seemed to whisper promises of transformation, of becoming something greater than his circumstances had ever suggested possible. Professor Elizabeth Chen's office in Langdell Hall overlooked Harvard Yard, her shelves lined with legal texts and photographs of former students who'd gone on to argue before the Supreme Court. At 45, she had built a reputation as one of Harvard Law School's most demanding yet supportive faculty members, particularly known for identifying exceptional talent in students from underrepresented backgrounds. Her own journey from a working-class, immigrant family in Oakland to Harvard professor had taught her to recognize genuine potential beneath surface circumstances. The interview began with standard questions about Malik's academic background and career aspirations, but Professor Chen quickly realized she was speaking with an unusually mature and thoughtful young man. His responses demonstrated deep understanding of constitutional principles, nuanced analysis of current legal challenges, and genuine passion for using law as a tool for social change. When she asked about his volunteer work at the homeless shelter, Malik's eyes lit up as he described implementing literacy programs and advocating for clients' rights. "Tell me about a time when you faced a significant challenge and how you overcame it," Professor Chen requested, leaning forward with genuine interest. Malik shared the story of his father's death and how it had motivated him to excel academically while supporting his mother emotionally. He spoke about financial struggles that forced him to work part-time jobs while maintaining perfect grades, about facing skepticism from guidance counselors who suggested community college instead of Harvard applications. As the interview progressed, Professor Chen found herself increasingly impressed by Malik's combination of intellectual brilliance and emotional maturity. His analysis of landmark civil rights cases went beyond textbook knowledge to demonstrate real understanding of how legal precedent shapes social progress. When they discussed systemic inequality in education, Malik offered specific policy solutions based on his first-hand experience with Detroit's struggling school system. "What surprises me most," Professor Chen said midway through their conversation, "is how clearly you understand the intersection between law and social justice despite limited formal exposure to legal education." Malik's response about studying Supreme Court cases at the Detroit Public Library and discussing constitutional principles with his neighbor Mrs. Patterson revealed a level of self-directed learning that impressed even Harvard's rigorous standards. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Professor Chen mentioned her own background, growing up in Oakland's underserved communities. She shared stories about feeling out of place during her own Harvard Law School experience, about professors who questioned whether she belonged there, about the isolation of being one of very few students of color in her graduating class. Malik listened intently, recognizing similar struggles in his own educational journey. "The difference between us," Professor Chen continued, "is that I didn't have the kind of community support you've described. Your mother's sacrifices, Mrs. Patterson's mentorship, your teacher's advocacy, that support system will serve you well here." She explained how Harvard had evolved since her student days, implementing programs specifically designed to help first-generation college students succeed in the demanding academic environment. Their discussion of specific legal cases revealed Malik's exceptional analytical abilities. When Professor Chen presented hypothetical scenarios involving constitutional interpretation, Malik's responses demonstrated sophisticated understanding of legal reasoning and practical implications. His passion for civil rights law was evident, but he also showed interest in corporate law and international human rights, suggesting the breadth of thinking Harvard valued in its students. Comment number 1: if you think Malik's background actually gives him advantages that wealthy students don't have. Hit that like button if you believe merit should be the only factor in college admissions, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring education stories. But here's what I want to know. Do you think Professor Chen's positive reaction guarantees Malik's acceptance? Or could something still go wrong? Let's see what happened when this promising interview took an unexpected direction. As their formal interview time concluded, Professor Chen made an unprecedented decision to extend their conversation. She walked Malik through Harvard Yard, pointing out significant buildings and sharing stories about famous alumni who had started from humble beginnings. Their discussion continued in the law library, where she showed him research resources and introduced him to current students who could answer questions about campus life. "I'll be honest with you, Malik," Professor Chen said as they concluded their extended meeting. "Your application was already strong on paper, but this interview has been exceptional. You have exactly the kind of mind and heart Harvard Law School needs." While she couldn't make formal promises about admissions decisions, her encouragement was unmistakable. She provided her direct contact information and invited Malik to reach out with any questions about the process. Walking back through Harvard Yard as afternoon shadows lengthened, Malik felt a profound sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. The campus no longer seemed intimidating, but welcoming, a place where his dreams could become reality. Professor Chen's words echoed in his mind as he imagined himself studying in these libraries, attending lectures in these halls, becoming part of the legal profession's next generation. That evening, Malik called his mother from his budget hotel near the airport, sharing every detail of his successful interview. Denise's tears of joy were audible through the phone as she listened to her son describe Professor Chen's encouragement and the campus tour. They talked about scholarship possibilities, about the support systems Harvard offered, about how his father would have reacted to seeing his son walking through such prestigious halls. Before going to sleep, Malik reviewed his interview notes and reflected on Professor Chen's advice about staying true to his values while embracing new opportunities. The conversation had exceeded his highest expectations, leaving him more determined than ever to continue fighting for his dreams. As he prepared for tomorrow's flight home, Malik had no idea that his next encounter with airline personnel would create challenges far more difficult than any Harvard interview question. Boston Logan Airport welcomed Malik back with the same bustle of travelers he'd encountered during his arrival. But now, everything felt different. Success filled his chest like warm sunlight as he replayed Professor Chen's encouraging words and imagined sharing the good news with his mother face to face. The Harvard campus tour had exceeded every expectation, and her informal indication of strong admission chances made his future feel tangible for the first time in his 17 years. Malik found a quiet corner near his gate and dialed his mother's number, unable to contain his excitement any longer. Denise answered on the first ring, having waited anxiously by her phone during his entire interview time. When Malik described Professor Chen's enthusiastic response and the extended campus tour, his mother's tears of joy were audible through the phone connection. They talked for 30 minutes about scholarship opportunities, campus life, and the incredible possibility that their family's dreams were finally within reach. "Baby, I'm so proud I could burst," Denise whispered through her tears. "Your daddy is smiling down on us right now, I just know it." They discussed practical concerns about tuition and living expenses, but both felt confident that financial aid and scholarships would make Harvard possible. Malik promised to research every available funding option, determined not to let money prevent him from seizing this life-changing opportunity. After ending the call, Malik made an impulsive decision that would later have significant consequences. The interview had gone so exceptionally well that he wanted to celebrate this pivotal moment in his life. Using birthday money he'd been saving for months plus his summer job earnings, Malik decided to upgrade his return ticket to first class. The extra cost stretched his budget considerably, but this felt like the most important day of his life. Airport security guard James Morrison noticed Malik's obvious happiness as he approached the ticket counter. The young man practically glowed with excitement, politely asking about upgrade availability and carefully counting his cash to cover the additional fees. Morrison, a 30-year veteran of airport security, had developed good instincts about passenger behavior, and Malik's genuine joy seemed completely innocent and understandable given his obvious good news. While waiting for his flight, Malik browsed the airport shops, eventually purchasing expensive wireless headphones as a gift for his mother. She'd been using the same cheap earbuds for years, and he wanted to surprise her with something special to commemorate this incredible day. The purchase represented a significant portion of his remaining money, but seeing her happiness would be worth every penny. Malik's interactions with airport staff and fellow passengers reflected his naturally respectful and kind personality. He helped an elderly woman retrieve her dropped boarding pass, offered to share his phone charger with a stressed businessman, and thanked every employee who assisted him. His behavior was consistently polite and considerate, the actions of a young man raised with strong values and genuine concern for others' welfare. As boarding time approached, Malik carefully organized his documents and gifts, ensuring everything was properly secured for the flight home. His Harvard interview folder now contained Professor Chen's business card and additional materials she'd provided, making the folder even more precious than before. The expensive headphones were wrapped in his carry-on bag, ready to surprise his mother upon his return to Detroit. When first-class boarding was announced, Malik joined the line with a mixture of excitement and nervousness about his upgraded accommodations. He'd never flown first class before, and the experience felt like another milestone in this transformative day. Other first-class passengers appeared to be business travelers and well-dressed families, but Malik's presence seemed perfectly appropriate given his formal interview attire and professional demeanor. Flight attendant Rebecca Sterling was working the same return flight, beginning her second shift of the day with the same aircraft and crew. When she noticed Malik boarding in the first-class section, her surprise quickly transformed into heightened suspicion. She remembered him from the morning flight in coach class, and his sudden upgrade triggered immediate questions in her mind about how a teenager could afford such expensive travel accommodations. Rebecca's observations of Malik continued as he settled into his first-class seat, noting his obvious unfamiliarity with the premium cabin's amenities. She watched him explore the seat controls and examine the enhanced meal options, interpreting his curiosity as evidence of deception rather than innocent excitement about his first-class experience. Her biases began constructing a narrative about fraud or stolen credit cards without any actual evidence of wrongdoing. Other passengers in first class seemed unbothered by Malik's presence, with several noting his polite demeanor and respectful behavior toward flight crew members. An elderly businessman even complimented Malik's professional appearance, assuming he was traveling for university interviews or similar academic purposes. However, Rebecca's growing suspicion remained focused solely on financial questions about his ticket upgrade. As the aircraft prepared for departure, Malik felt gratitude washing over him for this incredible day and the opportunities that lay ahead. Professor Chen's encouragement echoed in his mind, reinforcing his confidence about Harvard admission and his future legal career. He had no idea that Rebecca Sterling was already beginning to formulate suspicions that would soon transform his celebration into a nightmare, setting the stage for events that would change his life forever. The plane's engines started with their familiar rumble, and Malik looked out the window at Boston's skyline one final time before heading home to share his good news. In just a few hours, he would be embracing his mother and describing every detail of his successful Harvard interview. Unfortunately, Rebecca Sterling's racial biases and suspicious assumptions were about to turn his triumphant journey into a viral moment that would expose the ugly reality of discrimination in American air travel. As Flight 447 reached cruising altitude, Rebecca Sterling began her service routine with particular attention focused on first-class passenger Malik Johnson. Her 28 years of flight attendant experience had taught her to observe passenger behavior carefully, but her observations of Malik were filtered through unconscious racial biases that transformed innocent actions into suspicious activities. What should have been routine service became the beginning of a discriminatory ordeal that would soon escalate beyond anyone's imagination. Rebecca approached Malik's seat with manufactured concern, her tone falsely friendly as she commented on his nervous behavior during takeoff. Malik, still euphoric from his successful Harvard interview, responded with genuine puzzlement at her observation. He explained that he was actually excited rather than nervous, having just completed the most important interview of his life. His honest explanation only seemed to increase Rebecca's suspicion rather than alleviate her concerns. "It's just that you seem very anxious about something," Rebecca persisted, her voice carrying implications that made Malik increasingly uncomfortable. "And I noticed you upgraded your ticket at the last minute. That's sometimes a red flag for us." Her questions felt invasive and inappropriate, but Malik maintained his polite demeanor while explaining that he'd used his own money to celebrate his successful interview. Rebecca's response suggested she found his explanation implausible. Behind the scenes, Rebecca began manipulating other crew members by sharing her concerns about the young passenger in seat 2A. She approached her colleague Maria Santos, a newer flight attendant who respected Rebecca's experience and judgment. "That kid in first class is acting really strange," Rebecca whispered during their service preparations. "Something's not right about his story. Keep an eye on him." Maria, trusting Rebecca's veteran instincts, agreed to watch Malik more closely. The situation escalated when passenger Karen Mitchell, seated across the aisle from Malik, overheard fragments of Rebecca's concerns and began forming her own judgments. Karen, a 40-something marketing executive with her own unconscious biases, started observing Malik through the lens of Rebecca's suspicions. When Malik pulled out his expensive headphones to listen to music, Karen noticed and mentioned to Rebecca during drink service that the teenager seemed to have very expensive electronics for someone his age. Malik became increasingly aware that he was being watched and discussed by crew members and nearby passengers. The attention made him genuinely uncomfortable for the first time during his trip, transforming his celebratory mood into confusion and anxiety. He tried reading his Harvard materials to distract himself, but even this innocent activity seemed to draw more scrutiny from Rebecca, who wondered aloud to Maria about why a kid like that would have Harvard documents. Rebecca's fabricated narrative began taking shape as she shared more observations with crew members. She claimed that Malik had been sweating excessively during boarding, that his responses to her questions seemed rehearsed, and that his story about Harvard didn't add up given his apparent age and background. Each embellished detail built upon the previous ones, creating a false picture of suspicious behavior that existed primarily in Rebecca's prejudiced imagination. The psychological pressure began affecting Malik's natural behavior, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, where Rebecca's accusations actually started making him appear nervous and uncomfortable. When she approached his seat again to ask about his travel plans and who paid for his ticket, Malik's frustrated responses were interpreted as further evidence of deception. His requests to be left alone were characterized as uncooperative and potentially threatening behavior. Other first-class passengers had mixed reactions to the developing situation. Some, like businessman Robert Chen, found Rebecca's behavior inappropriate and intrusive toward a well-dressed young traveler. Others, influenced by their own biases and Rebecca's planted suggestions, began viewing Malik with suspicion. The cabin atmosphere grew tense as whispered conversations and obvious staring made Malik's flight experience increasingly uncomfortable and humiliating. Rebecca's manipulation reached new levels when she convinced Maria that they should document Malik's suspicious activities for their post-flight report. She began taking notes about his behavior, movements, and responses, creating an official-looking record of fabricated concerns. When Malik noticed the note-taking and asked what was happening, Rebecca's evasive response only added to his growing anxiety about the situation. The turning point came when Malik attempted to call his mother for emotional support, hoping her familiar voice might help him process the strange treatment he was receiving from the flight crew. Rebecca immediately interpreted this phone call as potentially threatening behavior, suggesting to other crew members that he might be contacting accomplices or coordinating some kind of illegal activity. Her wild speculation had no basis in reality, but continued building the false narrative she was constructing. Captain Martinez, focused on flying the aircraft, remained unaware of Rebecca's accusations and the toxic atmosphere developing in the first-class cabin. His attention was properly directed toward navigation and weather conditions for their Detroit arrival, trusting his experienced crew to handle passenger service professionally. He had no idea that one of his flight attendants was building a discrimination case that would soon explode into national headlines. As the flight continued toward Detroit, Rebecca made her fateful decision to contact authorities upon landing. Her fabricated concerns about Malik's behavior, financial situation, and potential criminal activity would soon trigger a chain of events that transformed a young man's celebration into a viral moment of injustice. The stage was set for an arrival that would change Malik's life forever and expose the ugly reality of racial profiling in American aviation. Flight 447 touched down at Detroit Metropolitan Airport under routine circumstances, but passengers had no idea they were about to witness an event that would spark nationwide protests and forever change airline discrimination policies. Rebecca Sterling had made her decision during the final hour of flight, contacting airport security with fabricated claims about suspicious passenger behavior. Her 28 years of experience and authoritative position gave her report immediate credibility with security personnel who trusted flight crew assessments without question. Malik felt relief as the plane taxied toward the gate, eager to disembark and reunite with his mother who was waiting in the terminal. His excitement about sharing Harvard interview details had returned during the flight's final hour, though Rebecca's strange behavior continued puzzling him. He gathered his belongings carefully, ensuring his precious Harvard folder and his mother's gift remained secure. Other passengers began standing and retrieving carry-on luggage, creating the familiar end-of-flight bustle. The atmosphere changed dramatically when Captain Martinez announced that passengers should remain seated due to a security matter requiring immediate attention. Several police officers boarded the aircraft, their presence creating immediate tension and speculation among travelers. Most passengers assumed someone had forgotten to declare prohibited items or violated standard travel regulations. Nobody expected what happened next. Officer Patricia Davis led the security response, entering the aircraft with 3 additional officers and airport security personnel. Rebecca Sterling met them at the forward galley, pointing toward Malik's seat, while providing her fabricated account of suspicious behavior, financial irregularities, and potential criminal activity. Her confident demeanor and detailed false narrative convinced the officers that they were dealing with a legitimate security threat, requiring immediate intervention. Malik's shock was absolute when Officer Davis approached his seat and asked him to stand. "Sir, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding some irregularities with your travel," she announced loudly enough for surrounding passengers to hear clearly. Malik's confusion was genuine and visible as he asked what irregularities she meant, explaining that he was simply returning from a Harvard University interview. His honest bewilderment was interpreted as potential resistance. The situation escalated rapidly when Malik was informed he was being detained for investigation. As Officer Davis placed handcuffs on his wrists, His Harvard acceptance letter fell from his folder onto the aircraft floor, the prestigious university letterhead clearly visible to nearby passengers. Several travelers immediately began recording, with their phones, sensing they were witnessing something significant and potentially controversial. Passenger reactions split along predictable lines influenced by unconscious bias and limited information. Some travelers, like businessman Robert Chen, vocally questioned why a well-dressed young man was being arrested without apparent cause. Others, influenced by Rebecca's planted suggestions and their own prejudices, assumed law enforcement must have legitimate reasons for the detention. The aircraft cabin buzzed with whispered conversations and obvious tension. Karen Mitchell, who had supported Rebecca's suspicions throughout the flight, felt increasing discomfort as she watched Malik's genuine distress and terror. His emotional response seemed entirely inconsistent with someone guilty of criminal activity. When his Harvard documents scattered across the floor, she began questioning whether she had contributed to a terrible mistake, based on assumptions rather than facts. Social media amplification began immediately as passengers posted videos and photos of Malik's arrest across multiple platforms. The hashtag #DarnFlightWhileBlack started trending within minutes, accompanied by eyewitness accounts of what appeared to be racial profiling. The visual of a well-dressed black teenager in handcuffs while Harvard documents lay scattered created powerful imagery that resonated with viewers nationwide. Comment number 1. If you think this arrest was justified based on what we know so far, smash that like button if you believe everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of race, and hit subscribe to see how this shocking story unfolds. But here's what's really eating at me. If you were a passenger on this flight, would you have spoken up for Malik or stayed quiet? The answer might surprise you, because what happened next changed everything. Denise Johnson arrived at the airport gate just as news of her son's arrest began spreading through terminal corridors. Her transition from excitement about hearing interview details to horror at seeing her son in handcuffs was captured by news cameras that had rushed to cover the developing story. Her emotional breakdown in the terminal became another viral component of the rapidly expanding media coverage. The arrest photos and videos showed Malik's Harvard acceptance letter prominently scattered on the aircraft floor, creating powerful, visual evidence of the disconnect between Rebecca's accusations and the young man's obvious academic achievements. News outlets immediately picked up the story, with legal experts questioning how a Harvard-bound student could be detained based solely on flight attendant suspicions without supporting evidence. National civil rights organizations began responding, within hours, with statements condemning apparent racial profiling and demanding full investigation of the incident. The airline's stock price began declining as negative publicity spread across traditional and social media platforms. Corporate executives found themselves managing a public relations crisis that was growing exponentially with each passing hour. Malik's detention in the airport security facility became the focal point of rapidly intensifying media attention. News vans surrounded Detroit Metropolitan Airport as reporters sought interviews with witnesses and family members. The story's emotional components, academic achievement, and clear evidence of potential discrimination created perfect conditions for viral social media spread and sustained news coverage. Rebecca Sterling watched the growing media attention with increasing panic as she realized her fabricated accusations had created a national incident. Her initial confidence in her suspicions began wavering as she observed Malik's genuine distress and the complete absence of evidence supporting her claims. The reality of what she had set in motion started becoming clear as airline supervisors began demanding detailed explanations of her actions. The viral videos showed Malik's respectful cooperation with authorities, despite his obvious confusion and terror. His polite responses to officers' questions and his attempts to explain his Harvard interview created stark contrast with Rebecca's claims about threatening or uncooperative behavior. Public opinion began shifting strongly in his favor as more details about his academic achievements and character became widely known. Airport security protocols required thorough investigation of all flight crew reports, but the complete absence of supporting evidence for Rebecca's claims became apparent within hours. Malik's financial records showed legitimate payment for his ticket upgrade. His Harvard interview was easily verified, and his behavior throughout both flights was confirmed as exemplary by multiple witnesses, including Captain Williams from his original flight. The incident's transformation from routine security matter to national civil rights controversy happened with stunning speed, driven by powerful imagery and clear evidence of discriminatory treatment. Malik's arrest had become a symbol of ongoing racial bias in American society, setting the stage for revelations that would expose the systematic nature of Rebecca Sterling's prejudiced behavior and ultimately transform airline industry policies nationwide. Within 24 hours of Malik's arrest, civil rights attorney Marcus Washington had reviewed the viral footage and decided to represent the teenager pro bono. Washington, a Harvard Law School graduate himself, recognized the case's potential to expose systematic discrimination within the airline industry. His prestigious Washington, D.C. firm immediately deployed a team of investigators to examine every aspect of the incident, determined to uncover the truth behind Rebecca Sterling's fabricated accusations. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns in Rebecca Sterling's 28-year career that had previously gone unnoticed or unreported. Human resources records showed 7 formal complaints against Rebecca for inappropriate treatment of minority passengers, though all had been dismissed due to lack of concrete evidence. Several former colleagues, speaking anonymously, described her tendency to express suspicion about Black and Latino passengers' ability to afford premium tickets or presence in first-class cabins. Retired Captain Williams, who had witnessed Rebecca's behavior on Malik's original flight to Boston, came forward with crucial testimony about her obvious discomfort during his mentoring conversation with the young man. Williams described how Rebecca had questioned him afterward about Malik's legitimacy, asking inappropriate questions about whether he believed the Harvard story was genuine. Her reaction to a positive interaction between 2 Black individuals revealed the depth of her racial bias. Social media investigators uncovered Rebecca's Facebook and Twitter accounts, which contained numerous posts expressing racially charged opinions about crime, welfare recipients, and urban education. Her social media history included sharing articles from questionable sources about academic fraud and financial crimes, often accompanied by her own commentary, suggesting that certain communities were inherently prone to deception. The posts painted a clear picture of deeply held racial prejudices. Professor Elizabeth Chen flew to Detroit immediately upon learning of Malik's arrest, bringing with her documentation of their exceptional interview and Harvard's strong interest in his application. Her testimony provided crucial evidence about Malik's character, academic achievements, and legitimate purpose for traveling to Boston. Chen's prestigious reputation and detailed account of their meeting effectively demolished any remaining credibility for Rebecca's suspicious claims. The airline's internal investigation uncovered additional troubling evidence about Rebecca's behavior patterns. Cabin crew members from previous flights described instances where Rebecca had made inappropriate comments about minority passengers' clothing, speech patterns, or travel destinations. Several colleagues admitted they had witnessed questionable behavior, but failed to report it due to Rebecca's seniority and reputation within the company. Airport security footage provided definitive proof of Malik's exemplary behavior throughout his entire travel experience. Cameras captured his polite interactions with ticket agents, his respectful treatment of other passengers, and his obvious happiness about his successful interview. The footage also showed Rebecca's animated conversations with crew members during the flight, apparently building her fabricated case against an innocent teenager. Karen Mitchell's conscience finally compelled her to come forward with a detailed confession about her role in supporting Rebecca's accusations. She admitted that her suspicions were based entirely on racial bias, rather than actual observation of concerning behavior. Mitchell's testimony described how Rebecca had systematically influenced her perceptions through suggestive comments and leading questions, demonstrating the flight attendant's manipulative abilities. Financial investigators confirmed that Malik's ticket upgrade was purchased legitimately with his own money, earned through summer employment and birthday savings. Bank records showed a clear transaction history supporting his account of the purchase, while his mother's financial records demonstrated the family's sacrifices to afford the original ticket to Boston. Every aspect of his travel was completely legitimate and above board. The Federal Aviation Administration launched its own investigation into the incident, examining whether Rebecca's actions violated federal regulations about passenger treatment and discrimination. Legal experts suggested that her fabricated security report could constitute federal crimes, including filing false reports and violating civil rights under color of authority. The FAA's involvement elevated the case beyond simple employment disputes to potential criminal charges. Additional passengers from both flights came forward to support Malik's version of events and criticize Rebecca's behavior. Their testimonies painted a consistent picture of a respectful, intelligent young man who had been targeted solely because of his race and age. Several passengers admitted feeling uncomfortable with Rebecca's treatment of Malik, but failing to intervene during the incidents. Harvard University issued an official statement supporting Malik and condemning the discriminatory treatment he received. The university's announcement that his admission remained guaranteed regardless of the incident's outcome sent a powerful message about institutional support for diversity and equal treatment. Harvard's backing provided additional credibility to Malik's character and achievements. Medical experts examined Malik's psychological state following his traumatic arrest experience, documenting symptoms of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress directly related to the incident. The evaluation provided evidence of genuine harm caused by Rebecca's false accusations, supporting potential damage claims in civil litigation. His emotional distress was clearly documented and directly attributable to the discriminatory treatment. Rebecca Sterling's desperate attempts to maintain her false narrative began crumbling under the weight of contradictory evidence. Her changing explanations and inability to provide concrete evidence of suspicious behavior exposed the fabricated nature of her accusations. Airline supervisors placed her on administrative leave pending completion of the investigation, while union representatives struggled to defend her increasingly indefensible actions. The investigation revealed a systematic failure of airline procedures that allowed Rebecca's biases to escalate into criminal accusations without proper oversight or evidence verification. Corporate executives realized they faced not only public relations disasters, but potential federal investigations into company-wide discrimination policies. The incident had exposed institutional problems extending far beyond one flight attendant's individual prejudices. National media attention forced the airline's board of directors to take immediate and decisive action to address the growing public relations catastrophe surrounding Malik Johnson's wrongful arrest. Within 72 hours of the incident, corporate executives announced Rebecca Sterling's termination for cause, effective immediately, along with the revocation of her pension benefits due to violation of company discrimination policies. The swift action reflected both legal necessity and genuine recognition that her behavior was indefensible. Congressional hearings on airline discrimination began within 2 weeks, with Malik providing powerful testimony about his experience and the broader implications for civil rights and commercial aviation. His articulate presentation before the House Transportation Committee captured national attention, as he described not only his personal trauma, but also the systematic changes needed to prevent similar incidents. His poise and intelligence during the nationally televised hearings impressed lawmakers from both political parties. "What happened to me wasn't just about one flight attendant's prejudice," Malik testified, his voice steady despite the emotional weight of his words. It revealed how unconscious bias can escalate into criminal accusations when institutions fail to implement proper checks and balances. No student should fear that pursuing educational opportunities will result in arrest based solely on the color of their skin. The Federal Aviation Administration implemented new mandatory training requirements for all airline personnel, focusing specifically on unconscious bias recognition and proper procedures for reporting genuine security concerns. The training programs, developed in consultation with civil rights organizations, included specific modules about racial profiling and the difference between legitimate security threats and discriminatory assumptions based on passenger demographics. Rebecca Sterling faced potential federal criminal charges for filing false reports and violating civil rights under color of authority. Federal prosecutors reviewed her case for possible conspiracy charges related to her systematic pattern of discriminatory behavior toward minority passengers. Her 28-year career ended not only in termination, but also in potential imprisonment for civil rights violations. The airline agreed to a $2.5 million settlement with Malik and his family, acknowledging institutional failures that allowed discriminatory treatment to escalate into wrongful arrest. The settlement included provisions for systematic policy changes, mandatory bias training for all employees, and establishment of independent oversight committees to review passenger treatment complaints. Corporate executives admitted that their previous complaint procedures had been inadequate to address subtle but persistent discrimination. Malik's decision to use his settlement money to establish the Equal Skies Scholarship Fund demonstrated remarkable maturity and commitment to helping other students overcome barriers to educational opportunities. The fund's mission focused specifically on supporting first-generation college students from underrepresented communities who faced financial obstacles in pursuing higher education. His transformation of personal trauma into positive social change inspired national admiration. Denise Johnson's employer, Detroit Medical Center, promoted her to nursing supervisor in recognition of the positive national attention surrounding her family's dignity throughout the crisis. The promotion included substantial salary increases that would help support Malik's Harvard education and improve their family's financial stability. The hospital's leadership wanted to demonstrate support for families facing discrimination while recognizing Denise's professional qualifications. Karen Mitchell, consumed by guilt over her role in supporting Rebecca's false accusations, became an advocate for bias training in corporate environments. She resigned from her marketing position to work full-time with civil rights organizations, using her experience to educate others about how easily prejudice can influence judgment. Her transformation from passive participant in discrimination to active advocate represented a powerful example of personal growth. Other victims of Rebecca Sterling's discriminatory behavior began coming forward as news coverage revealed her pattern of targeting minority passengers. Their testimonies exposed systematic problems within airline culture that extended beyond individual prejudice to institutional failures in addressing employee bias. Class action lawsuits emerged as additional passengers sought justice for similar treatment. The incident sparked broader conversations about racial profiling in transportation, hospitality, and customer service industries nationwide. Corporate executives across various sectors implemented new training programs and policy changes to prevent similar incidents within their organizations. Malik's case became a catalyst for examining institutional racism in commercial settings throughout American society. Harvard University accelerated Malik's admission process, providing early acceptance along with full scholarship coverage in recognition of his extraordinary character demonstrated throughout the crisis. The university's admissions office noted that Malik's grace under pressure and commitment to social justice exemplified the leadership qualities Harvard sought in its students. His guaranteed admission removed any remaining stress about his educational future. Legal experts praised the case as a landmark example of how social media and public pressure could force institutional accountability for discriminatory practices. The rapid viral spread of arrest footage had created unprecedented transparency, making it impossible for the airline to minimize or ignore the incident. The case demonstrated the power of citizen journalism in exposing civil rights violations. Media coverage evolved from initial incident reporting to broader examination of systemic discrimination in American commercial industries. Major news outlets produced investigative series about airline passenger treatment, revealing additional patterns of bias affecting minority travelers. Malik's case had opened floodgates for examining previously hidden discrimination across the transportation sector. The Equal Skies Scholarship Fund received donations from across the country, ultimately raising over $500,000 in its first year to support disadvantaged students pursuing higher education. Contributors included airline employees, Harvard alumni, civil rights supporters, and ordinary citizens moved by Malik's story and his positive response to injustice. The fund's success demonstrated public support for addressing educational inequality. As the immediate crisis aftermath subsided, Malik prepared for his freshman year at Harvard with national recognition as a symbol of resilience and positive change. His transformation from wrongful arrest victim to civil rights advocate had captured America's attention and respect. The stage was set for his continued impact on legal and social justice throughout his educational journey and beyond. 1 year after the incident that made him a household name, Malik Johnson walked across Harvard Yard as a confident first-year law student who had not only survived unprecedented public scrutiny, but transformed it into positive change for countless others. His academic performance exceeded even Professor Chen's high expectations, earning him recognition as one of Harvard Law School's most promising students. The Equal Skies Scholarship Fund had grown to support 50 students from underrepresented communities, creating opportunities that would not have existed without his decision to transform trauma into triumph. The scholarship recipients represented diverse backgrounds, united by shared determination to overcome systemic barriers to higher education. Maria Gonzalez, a first-generation college student from rural Texas, credited the fund with making law school possible after facing discrimination in her undergraduate admissions process. James Wright, a former foster child from Chicago, used his scholarship to pursue environmental law with hopes of addressing pollution in low-income communities. Each recipient carried forward Malik's mission of using education to create positive social change. Rebecca Sterling's court-ordered community service at various civil rights organizations had begun producing unexpected results in her personal transformation. Initially bitter and resentful about her termination and legal consequences, she gradually began understanding the real impact of her discriminatory behavior on passengers like Malik. Her mandatory bias training evolved from grudging compliance to genuine recognition of her unconscious prejudices and their harmful effects on others. The most shocking development came during a civil rights seminar at Detroit University, where Rebecca was completing community service hours, and Malik was delivering a keynote address about overcoming discrimination through education. Their unexpected meeting created a moment of profound tension as the audience recognized both figures from the viral incident that had sparked national conversations about racial profiling in aviation. Rebecca's tearful public apology to Malik during the seminar's question period surprised everyone present, including herself. "I destroyed an innocent young man's moment of triumph because of my own prejudices," she admitted before hundreds of witnesses. "I failed him. I failed my profession. And I failed the basic human dignity that every passenger deserved from me. No training or ignorance excuses what I did to him." Malik's response demonstrated the maturity and grace that had characterized his handling of the entire ordeal. Rather than accepting her apology with simple forgiveness, he challenged Rebecca to examine the systematic nature of discrimination and commit to meaningful change beyond court-ordered community service. His words were firm but not cruel, educational rather than vindictive, reflecting his developing skills as a future civil rights attorney. "Apologies matter," Malik responded, "but actions matter more. The question isn't whether you're sorry about what happened to me. The question is what you're going to do to prevent it from happening to the next young person who doesn't look like what you expect success to look like." His challenge prompted Rebecca to consider how she could use her experience to educate others about the dangers of unconscious bias. The airline industry's response to Malik's case had produced measurable improvements in passenger treatment policies nationwide. Federal statistics showed significant reductions in discrimination complaints following implementation of mandatory bias training programs. Several airlines established passenger advocate positions specifically to address concerns about unfair treatment, creating institutional safeguards that hadn't existed before Malik's wrongful arrest. In an unexpected turn of events, Rebecca approached Malik after the seminar to discuss her own experience of discrimination following her termination from the airline. Despite her actions causing the original incident, she had faced age discrimination and retaliation when seeking new employment, giving her firsthand understanding of how bias affected job opportunities. Her experience had taught her difficult lessons about being judged unfairly based on assumptions rather than individual merit. Malik's decision to represent Rebecca pro bono in her employment discrimination case shocked legal observers and civil rights advocates nationwide. His willingness to defend someone who had wronged him demonstrated extraordinary commitment to principle over personal revenge. "Civil rights aren't just for people we like," he explained to skeptical classmates. "If we only protect rights when it's convenient, they're not really rights at all." Their collaboration on Rebecca's case created an unlikely partnership that challenged both individuals to grow beyond their initial encounter. Rebecca's testimony about systematic bias within airline culture provided valuable evidence for ongoing federal investigations into industry discrimination. Her insider knowledge helped expose institutional problems that extended far beyond individual prejudice to corporate policy failures. The case's resolution included Rebecca's successful discrimination claim against her former employer, along with her commitment to establish an airline industry bias training program using her settlement funds. Her transformation from perpetrator to advocate represented a unique form of restorative justice that addressed systematic problems while acknowledging individual responsibility for harmful actions. Malik's law school graduation speech 3 years later reflected on how the airplane incident had shaped his understanding of justice, forgiveness, and the possibility for positive change, even in difficult circumstances. His first case as a licensed attorney involved defending another black teenager facing discrimination in educational settings, with Rebecca serving as a key witness about institutional bias patterns. The Equal Skies Scholarship Fund had expanded to support over 200 students annually, creating a lasting legacy that extended far beyond Malik's individual experience. Recipients pursued careers in law, medicine, education, and public service, carrying forward the mission of using personal success to create opportunities for others facing similar barriers to advancement. What do you think about Malik's decision to forgive and even represent Rebecca? Comment number 1. If you believe forgiveness can create more change than revenge. Comment number 2. If you think some actions are unforgivable. Smash that like button. If this story inspired you to think differently about second chances, hit subscribe for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that redemption is possible, even in the darkest circumstances. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of justice, forgiveness, and transformation. Malik's story reminds us that our response to injustice defines us more than the injustice itself, and that even the most painful experiences can become catalysts for positive change. Until next time, keep believing in the power of education, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the possibility that tomorrow can be better than today. Malik Johnson's extraordinary journey from wrongful arrest to Harvard Law School teaches us profound lessons about resilience, systemic change, and the transformative power of education. His story demonstrates that individual excellence cannot shield young people of color from institutional bias, but it also shows how proper response to injustice can create lasting positive change for entire communities. The airline industry's swift policy changes following public outcry prove that corporate accountability requires constant vigilance from citizens and media attention. Rebecca Sterling's transformation from perpetrator to advocate illustrates that even deeply ingrained prejudices can be addressed through education, consequences, and genuine commitment to change. Perhaps most importantly, Malik's decision to represent his former accuser legally challenges us to consider whether true justice requires punishment or transformation. His choice to establish scholarship programs rather than seek maximum damages shows how victims can become agents of systematic change rather than simply seeking personal compensation. The incident exposed how unconscious bias operates in professional settings, where authority figures' assumptions can escalate minor interactions into life-changing crises. It reminds us that fighting discrimination requires both individual awareness and institutional safeguards, because personal good intentions are insufficient without systematic accountability measures. Ultimately, this story proves that education, integrity, and moral courage can overcome even the most challenging circumstances when supported by community action and media transparency. What lessons from Malik's story resonated most deeply with you? Comment below and share your thoughts on whether forgiveness or accountability creates more lasting change in society. If this incredible journey inspired you to believe in second chances and the power of education, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more amazing true stories of triumph over adversity. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that even our darkest moments can become stepping stones to extraordinary achievements. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in justice, growth, and the possibility that tomorrow can always be better than today. Keep fighting the good fight, and remember that your voice matters in creating the change you want to see in the world.